I'm going to take, I know I'm the last, well, we are the last group before you have lunch, and I know by now you guys are probably getting hungry. But I do want to take this one last opportunity to say thank you to everybody who's here. For me personally, you're going to get thanked at the end of the day by Pure Oakland Water and the Water Commissioner's Office. But I do want to take an opportunity on my behalf and Lawrence Tech's behalf to thank everyone for being here. And I got to tell you that I am literally more excited now than I've ever been in my career, professional career, academic career. There's so many interesting things going on and so many new partners coming to the table that it just, to me, it's just an incredibly exciting time. You're going to hear from Jody Raines a little bit later about the Herb Family Foundation. And the fear of starting to list individuals is who you're going to miss. But I'm telling you, with the work that DWSD and the Herb Family Foundation and Kresge and Detroit Future Cities and the work Tetra Tech and Mannequin Smith and Sustainable Waterworks and all that group and what they're doing in the city right now is fascinating. On the flip side, we're seeing better collaboration between state agencies. I'm working on a project with ECT on a sustainable harbor strategies being funded by DNR, Michigan Sea Grant, MISHTA Housing Authority, DEQ, Office of the Great Lakes. And so you've got actually state agencies who are working in collaboration like they never had before, which I think is also really great. So I know there's a lot of representatives from the DEQ here. They had a green infrastructure conference back in May that many of you attended. And so we're looking at continuing that dialogue as well. So I think it's a really exciting opportunity. I appreciate what we've seen so far because the challenges are great. We have great challenges, but luckily I think we have a great talent pool to start addressing that. So with that, that's kind of my intro to the next topic that we're going to talk about, which is one of the very exciting projects from my point of view that we're working on right now, and that's how can the nonprofit organizations work with the communities, work with the consultants, work with the academics to do green infrastructure visioning. I'm going to turn it over to Nina.
All right, good morning. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, how do I advance the slide? Just click it here.
It's the best thing to do right there. That way you can walk around.
All right, okay, cool. So my name is Nina Ignazik. I'm with the Clinton River Watershed Council, and I'm a watershed planner there, and I'm working on a really exciting program that has been made possible by the Herb Family Foundation, where we're able to work with our local communities, not only on some of these more environmentally focused issues, but also on raising the visibility of our water resources as economic and community quality of life assets, and really kind of trying to tie all of that together. The watershed is 960 square miles, and we also include Lake St. Clair within our service area. The mission of our organization is to have individual and community actions that come together to promote the health of the watershed. So Water Towns is based on the idea that we have all of these assets in the Clinton River watershed, in the Lake St. Clair watershed, that are really being underutilized. Historically, we've not developed our water resources to the potential that exists for community and economic development. And some of that has been due to environmental degradation, and some of that has just been due to poor land use planning, poor community development choices. But we see a huge opportunity for developing areas along our waterways where people can actually engage with them. Go to the water, enjoy what's there, and have that be a part of your quality of life. So what we've done is initiated this program called Water Towns, which is really targeting the towns, the actual places within our watershed, to try to find out what's unique and what's valuable about each of these places, and work with those local communities, whether it's civic groups, whether it's local DDAs, whether it's the cities themselves, and strategizing how can we look at specific areas in your community that really are underutilized and could be more of a community asset than they currently are, and then by that token raise awareness and make sure that people are on board for all of these other more serious environmental considerations that we've been talking about today. So this is just a map that shows what we're calling our water hubs, and these are the areas that we kind of focus our actions on. So we've identified a really long laundry list of areas along the river, do I have a shooter on here? Sorry, should've. Well, anyway, all the way up from the northern part of the township, Independent Township, through Oakland County, out into Macomb County, and even into Lake St. Clair. And these are areas like downtown Rochester, where the Paint Creek, the Stony Creek, and the Clinton River all come together. Areas like Clinton Township, where there are significant parklands along the waterways that face flooding pressures. Areas like downtown Clarkston up in the northern part of Oakland County, where the headwaters of the Clinton River exist, in close proximity to a nice town. So these are areas where we really think that there's a lot of potential, and we're all about trying to realize that potential and make that happen. So one of the ways that we're doing that is by working with Don Carpenter and Rachel Pleshak, who have been great to work with. So what we did originally was we went to some of these communities and we did broader visioning around the waterways and identified concept plans for what's possible, what could be implemented in the short term, what could be implemented in the long term. And in a lot of these areas, improving our green infrastructure, what came up again and again. So we were able, with the help of the URB funding, to work with Don Carpenter and Rachel to actually take that a step further in some of these communities and come up with some really detailed concept plans and cost estimates that can hopefully help move us forward, help us have more detail, so that when grant opportunities come up and other funding opportunities come up, we're ready to go and we know what we want to do. So the goals of our project are these conceptual site plans showing the specific green infrastructure practices applied to some of these areas, which you'll see much more detail later in the presentation. Some really artistic renderings that kind of get people excited, help them visualize, because when you start talking about, bioswales and rain gardens, people don't necessarily know what that means, and if they do know what it means, they may have trouble visualizing how it fits into the context of the specific area. So this really helps people understand in the areas that they're familiar with what this stuff looks like and how it could benefit the community. The stormwater volume reduction estimates are important from the perspective of showing the environmental benefit. It's not something that necessarily is easy to understand for local officials, but if we can quantify that and show the value and then hopefully equate that into economic benefits, we think there's a value there. And then some generalized cost estimates. These are not going to be engineering level designs where we're going to have detailed cost estimates, but they're going to get us to a place where at least we have a ballpark to understand how much this can cost, so that if a city goes and does its capital improvement plan, they can use this information to help guide them and figure out, okay, we want to put this bioswale in at this park next year. We got to have this range, and then the Watershed Council knows, well, if we see this funding opportunity come up, we know that the city's committed this in the capital improvement plan, and we can leverage for additional funds. So it just gives us a better, more detailed planning tool as we work with communities. So the three communities that we're working with, and we're hoping to continue this and work with more, are Clarkston and Rochester, both in Oakland County, and Clinton Township. We're working with these communities on a variety of initiatives to try to advance this water towns idea. But these are some really unique communities with some really different challenges. Clinton Township being much more suburban, downtown Rochester and downtown Clarkston having much more urban feel, so there's different issues that we're dealing with. So we're really excited about the project. I'm so excited about the products that we've seen thus far, and I know I can tell you that the community leaders that we've been working with are also very excited. Township engineers, city managers, they're going to be able to use this information to actually make these things happen and get these things built on the ground. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Don Carpenter.
Thanks, Nina. So one of the best parts about being a faculty member is you get to stand up here and take credit for the hard work of your students, right? So unfortunately, I have a little bit too much ethics for that. So what you're going to see is 90% Rachel's work, okay? So this is a lot of this. And so the question is, well, then if it's Rachel's work, why am I up here at all? And so I gave Rachel the opportunity. I said, hey, Rachel, why don't you present your work? And she said, I don't think I really want to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to shoot for next year. Next year, the goal is to have Rachel standing up here talking about Rachel's work. So anyway, this is our time schedule here. The final deliverables is really what I'm going to be showing you now. And to go into a little bit more detail, what we did was a process. We put together this process for addressing these goals. And so we started by visiting with each community, talking with them, trying to understand their vision, what they wanted to accomplish, where they were. We downloaded existing or retrieved existing GIS databases, infrastructure, what kind of pipe networks did they have already in place. We came up with conceptual site plans and preliminary stormwater estimates, went back to the community and said, here's what we're thinking, what do you think? That led us to eliminate some things. They said, well, that's okay, but we really want to preserve that for flag football, so let's take that out. Or, well, you know, that gentleman doesn't really play nice with others, so we should probably leave his parking lot out of the plan. So it was that back and forth process. That was the internal deliverable check. So finally, we have final site plans and stormwater calculations associated with this. Okay, and the way we did the stormwater calculations is with the SCS curve number method. So that's, I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but there was a process for looking at volumetric runoff from low impact development using an industry standard. The cost estimations, Nina mentioned that briefly. What we did is we started using WERF, the Water Environment Research Foundation. They have an LID whole life cycle cost models tool that we use for these cost estimates. And then the thing that's great about that tool, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is you can start off by putting in just industry standards. And as you refine your ideas, it allows you to start substituting out. So once you know you're going to use raised beds in your community gardens, you can start figuring out exact costs and things of that nature. We also use the Michigan LID manual and RS means, and then a few local sources in terms of some of the cost estimates. When you see the numbers on the cost, I do want to point out two other things. One is we assumed 100% external contractor installations, meaning that if a municipality had some people in their grounds crew that could do some of this stuff, or volunteer organizations, that cost would come down. The other thing we did is we assumed everything on the high end. So like high end for all these suppliers, high end for everything. That way what you're seeing is an overestimate of the cost based on best factors. We figured we'd rather shoot high than, you know, and then what do you, the old saying is, well, anyway. Basically, we figured we'd shoot high, and that way they'll be pleasantly surprised when it comes time for reality, right? And so we're being honest about that as well. So one of the things we've had talked about is, well, how do you convey this to people? And so one of the things we did is we looked at a 2-year, 24-hour storm. I know that's not a flood event, but that's the typical event you're looking at for green infrastructure. So we said, well, let's focus on that water quality event. Let's see what we can do to capture the typical storm that happens once every 2 years. And so this is well, you'll see this over and over again. This represents existing runoff. What's there right now? After we do GI, this would be a represent of the reduction. So 15% reduction would be like that. So if you see a big purple dot like that, that's 100% reduction of runoff on the 2-year, 24-hour storm. Okay, so we need to start with the baseline. Naturalized shoreline would be like a 15%. So you're going to see that symbol over and over again. So I'm going to start walking through this a little faster, but I wanted you to understand where these numbers come from as you're trying to digest the images. So start with the village of Clarkston. So here we are in beautiful, beautiful downtown Clarkston. Okay. So here's our site. We kind of faded, this is all downtown Clarkston right here. We faded out where we weren't looking. So we have basically 5 sites going through right downtown Clarkston right here. Here's Main Street. You know, Kid Rock's favorite restaurant's right about there. So anyone who watches Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, they've been there. So we looked at a series of sites kind of stringing through the downtown, up and down Main Street. Okay. So this is, I'm not going to go through every slide as much detail as this one, but again, I want to show you what you're kind of trying to look at. We're trying to orient your eye to. So the way this parking lot is paved right now, this is a stall, and this is a stall. Nobody can park here. So you have a corner of asphalt that's obviously not draining properly, that doesn't get used by anyone for anything. Okay? Perfect opportunity for green infrastructure. So Nina and Rachel and myself, we basically walk the streets and try to identify places with low-hanging fruit retrofits. Okay? And if I offend anyone from any of these municipalities along the way, I apologize, but sometimes it just takes a fresh set of eyes to look at something, right? They are mowing the lake. Okay, so Clarkston DPW right now, their tires from their tractors are literally getting into the mill pond. Okay, so let's look at, well, maybe we need to educate on how to not mow all the way to the edge of the water line, right? And you can see there's obviously erosion because you have too much water coming off of that. So what did we do with this one right here? Well, we recommend a buffer zone, right? A riparian buffer zone, have a lot of green space. And you don't see it from this particular angle, but we also included a place for people to access the water. So there's still a park bench there. There's still a place where people can access the water, but we're not mowing the entire edge of the mill pond, right? Here's our little rain garden in there, bioswale curb cuts, things of that nature, okay? And so every single site, you're going to see a 50% reduction in rain guard of runoff. So that one little corner that's being used by no one for nothing can give you a 50% reduction in runoff from that parking lot, okay? And that $5,000 estimate, again, that's a really high estimate. That's a very high estimate, but that's based on external contractors removing concrete, removing asphalt. So I would say it's going to come in a lot less than that, but we want to make sure that we're kind of setting the stage for some of this information. Okay. So this is the green alley. I'm going to call it the green alley. So this is the alleyway, and this alleyway goes from the parking lot north of Clarkston straight down to the City Hall area and also Depot Park. It actually gets a surprising amount of pedestrian traffic despite it not looking very appealing, right? And you also have direct connect storm sewers. The storm sewers off all these buildings direct connect right into the river. Okay, so what we looked at doing was modifying that, putting in permeable pavers, putting in planter boxes along the entryways of all the buildings, using different paver types. One of the things we're looking at here is, okay, you obviously still have to have access for the trucks, but we're intentionally segregating off a piece of the walkway there for that visual sightline. This is where the pedestrians go. You're not going to get run over by the delivery trucks. You're going to focus yourself in this area right here. Okay? 100% reduction on the 2-year 24-hour storm, and a significant reduction even on the 10-year storm and the larger storms that are causing flooding. Okay. Main Street, existing. So this was an interesting one. Anyone who's familiar with Main Street, it's now just being redone by MDOT, right? That's an MDOT street. Anyone from MDOT in the room? Okay, one. We got one. He's like, oh, crap. So, unfortunately, this is just being done right now, and all the designs were done, and everything's just being 100% repaved. And so we almost took this out, but they said, you know what, put that in the vision. We want you to put it in there, you know, because what it could look like. This is what could have been kind of thing, but it's just now already been done, already been planned. So one of the things we need to do is reach out to the linear, you know, basically the transportation authorities and say, when a road commission or when MDOT, when somebody's going to redo a road, let's look for opportunities. Let's look for opportunities to put in bump outs, traffic calming devices, beautification devices that also serve a significant stormwater improvement. Okay. So this is the riverbank, the existing riverbank in Clarkston. So my brother teaches, he's a football coach and a teacher at Clarkston schools, and he takes the middle school kids down to this stream bank all the time. And I explained to him what we were doing, and he's like, you can't do that. I'm like, well, why not? He goes, well, then I won't have a way to show my students what not to do. So I said, okay, tell you what, we'll do this. So what we're talking about again is we don't want to cut off pedestrian access to the water. We want the students to interact with the water. We want them to get wet. What we want to do, though, is focus that in locations, right? So if we can set aside some rapids here with nice flat stones that the students can walk across, that we can kind of concentrate water access, control that erosion, and then have other parts be riparian buffer zones. So we're going to set aside some areas to green up and clear water quality, and then focus attention on other areas. Okay? And a great example of that is this. So this is the existing south entrance of the parkland. So what we propose, new bridge, new place for the students to access, new places for my brother to take his kids and learn about water quality in a first-hand environment. Okay? So we've got a rain garden, stream bank stabilizations. And you can kind of start to see, right? So stream bank stabilizations isn't going to get you a tremendous amount of reduction. It's great for water quality, but you know, you're going to get 10, 20% reduction of the stormwater flow from a stream bank stabilization, whereas rain gardens, planter boxes, porous pavement, that's where you're going to get your 100% reduction on the 2-year 24-hour storms. Okay? So in sum, what we looked at for doing these 5 sites, there's a lot of impervious area here, a lot of downtown area, but we're still looking at about a 50% reduction. All of these improvements have a high-end cost of about $200,000. But to put this into context for you, okay, that is less than $2 per gallon. So you pay $1, $1.50, $2 for a bottle of water at the store all the time. We're talking about 10, 20, 30 years of usefulness at under $2 a gallon. Okay, so you got to, depends on how you look at that sticker shock, right? And again, I think that's way high. I really do. All right, Clinton Township, beautiful fishing pond right there. What we're looking at is we want to naturalize the shoreline there. They've got a beautiful arboretum coming across here. We're looking at extending this naturalized grove. But basically, Clinton Township has a tremendous amount of mowed turf grass. Huge amount of mowed turf grass. So we're looking at what can we do to soften up some of those areas. Oh, one last thing. So this is the large roof right here. We actually only put a green roof on this one because the rest of the roofs have more recently been retrofitted. They're not ready to be redone at this point. So we just kind of recommended maybe putting in a green roof on the roof that does need to be redone more quickly as opposed to just going crazy and putting green roofs on everything. So turf grass conversions, you can see here they've got this wonderful little village out there if anyone's familiar with it. And so behind the village is where they do the flag football. In front of the village they have concerts. They set up lunch trucks there. So there's a lot of public interaction, a lot of public use. We have to always take into consideration how the public's going to use this. But there are areas that you could put in native prairies that might even enhance the user's experience for this. Okay? So here's, for example, this area right here, just off to the right, that's where they put up all of their farmers markets, and when they have festivals, they put up all the vendors right there. But the front of the building's not being used for anything. And in fact, this is really wet right here, really poor drainage. Go figure, it's Clinton Township, right? Flat clay. So very poor drainage. So what we were looking at is, okay, well, how about we put a nice park bench in there that serves then as the rainwater harvesting system. So $600, you're capturing quite a bit of water and providing people a place to sit. Swale conveyance. So they've got a very large area here. This is about ready to be redone. And so one of the things I commend all of these communities for doing is to being so open-minded, right? They want to be green. They want to have better places for their community and their people to live in. So they said, well, we know we need to redo this. So instead of redoing it the way it already is, give us an alternative. What can we do instead? So we're looking at a really nice cut bioswale all the way through here, depressed in the center, good infiltration in the middle, complete capture of the 2-year 24-hour storm, most capture of the 10-year 24-hour storm. It's basically proven technologies. It's pretty high sticker price, but you got to remember that's also redoing a lot of the road there, curb cuts, underground, overflow. There's a lot of engineering that goes into that number. Okay. So formalizing pond access, as we were suggesting, instead of mowing the entire area, let's naturalize some of the shoreline here and have more formal access for people. So a few others, green roof. Yeah. So like when that says a 15% reduction, that's why I brought that up. It's 100% reduction on that roof. It's 15% on the entire building because that portion of the roof is only 15% of all the roof. Okay, so it's actually 100% of this part of the roof, 15% of the entire building. Okay. Existing parking lot. So this has been repaved a couple times, but obviously it's ready to go. So what we said is, well, let's look at traffic flow patterns. How are people using it? And so we recommended a couple different things to them about restructuring their flow patterns, reducing some of their width. And so what we end up doing, if you look here, we can keep the same number of parking spots and reduce the amount of impervious surface by almost 20,000 square feet just by looking at traffic flow patterns. Okay, so that's a big, big number. Okay. Swale improvements along the way. Okay, this is obviously, and the thing that's interesting about swales, right, is a lot of things we hear about maintenance is, man, those things are a pain in the butt to mow. Maybe we should just stop mowing them. Okay, so here's so here about a 32% reduction. One of the reasons that number is a little bit lower is a very, very large area. We kind of concentrate our improvements in several key locations, and that number is pretty large, a lot because of that, A, the green roof, and B, that entryway. Okay. So as Nina mentioned, the thing about this is they get to have all this broken down so they can prioritize. They can go through and say, okay, when we're ready to do a $100,000, $150,000 parking lot, let's look at this instead of this. City of Rochester has already had a lot of green work done to it. This is the Clinton River right here. That's the kayak launch there. Many of you are familiar with this. So what we're looking at is Rochester Road and the area underneath of Rochester Road, which is an MDOT road as well. And so we looked at, okay, how can we use that area? So this is a building nearby that is going to potentially be retrofit and rehabilitated into another use. So we can put in rain gardens, rainwater harvesting systems, beautification. So here's the existing amphitheater. I don't know if they call it an amphitheater, but we call it an amphitheater at this point. So, but let's make it an amphitheater. Let's actually get the people engaged, bring in the flagstone. Okay. And then, bioretention. Right now what's happening, I'm going to go back one. What's happening right now is water is just roaring down this pathway and just eroding out this part right here. And so what we're looking at doing is, okay, can we divert that water off this pathway into some bioretention cells, put in some paving, putting some riparian buffers there, kind of slow down. So they wanted to provide access to the river, which is exactly what they got, and it's exactly what we need. But just one of the unfortunate consequences is then you've basically paved an area for the water to go through and cause a lot of erosion. So we're just looking at retrofitting that. So here's underneath the bridge, right? Right now it's kind of an ugly area. And I apologize if anyone looks at this and thinks it's beautiful, but I'm gonna go with ugly. So we have the, sorry. So what you see here, all this erosion is because water is coming off the bridge deck below, falling straight down and just hitting the ground, and then carrying all of that polluted runoff from the road, all of that fine suspended sediments, and clogging up the drainage system downstream. So what we looked at doing is bioswales, rain gardens, rain chains. So I'm going to show you a little bit about that, but how can we kind of slow that water down and get it to infiltrate as best as possible? Okay. And so what we're looking at here is these are rain chains. So instead of that water cascading 30 or 40 feet, having it run down a series of rain chains, slow that water down, have it fall then into basically an intentional rock pool. So you're going to get a little bit of a rapids kind of look there, and then having that flow into a native bioswale. We've been told that MDOT's not going to let us do this. We can envision it, even if they don't let us do it. So what we might have to do is this is actually artistic rendering. That's actually not there right now. Right now, these fall straight down. We're going to look at piping it over and then piping it into the swale, so we get that additional storage out of it anyway. So pervious, this parking lot. So this parking lot's actually brand new, but it's already seen a lot of problems because of the additional runoff coming down through here. So maybe we can just get rid of one row of parking, put in some permeable pavers in there. Okay. And then the area below the bridge, right? So part of this is placemaking. So the idea behind water towns is placemaking. It's about giving people ways to interact with their water, and then it's about us figuring out better ways to improve water quality for the Great Lakes as a whole. So, all right, let's give them a place to go. Let's put in a walkway so they can access it, murals, crosswalks, new signage. So, and anybody who knows me, if you think I had anything to do with that picture at all, not a chance, not a chance. Okay. Other than, you know what I did? I said, you know what? That concrete wall could probably use a painting on it. That was my contribution. And then Rachel made it look like a painting. So about 32% reduction, $88,000. Again, that's because there's a tremendous amount of asphalt that we're trying to capture and treat here using reasonably priced green infrastructure. Okay. All right, so what's next? Okay, it's noon, which means what's next is lunch. But what's next for this project, we have a final report we're going to deliver to the Clinton River Watershed Council. We are making presentations to all three of these communities in November at evening meetings, city council meetings, so they can see the vision, see what we came up with. Then we're going to be providing all of this stuff electronically, including the cost spreadsheets, so their engineers, their DPW, their people can start filling in numbers that are more appropriate for their specific situation. So we'll explain to them what we did and kind of allow them to take the next step forward, which also then means the Clinton River Watershed Council can work with these communities for implementing the vision when funding opportunities come about or when infrastructure has to be replaced anyway, which is what's happening in Clinton Township. So with that, if you have any quick questions, I'll gladly take them. I know you really want to get to lunch.
Yeah, Don, your, or maybe it's not yours, but the representation of the volume reductions, it's a nice visual display. I think that makes it pretty clear for folks. Are you doing anything similar for the water quality improvements that these are providing?
Nope, we actually, for this one, we stayed with water quantity. We're just trying to keep it pretty simple. I mean, we can make the allegory or the tie to water quality but we're not saying, hey, we've already heard about how do you convey to people, this is how many pounds of phosphorus you're going to keep out. So we actually kind of kept it pretty simple. And actually, believe it or not, I can take credit for the raindrop. Rachel drew it, but I just thought we got to do something to keep it that they can really easily understand. Tammy.
I just want to say, as somebody who lives in Clarkston and has been advocating for this unsuccessfully for 10 years, thank you, thank you.
Oh, thank Clarkston. They're the ones who came to the table. So, any other questions? No. All right. Well, great. Thank you. We have a sorry.